My name's Dave Steele. I am from Manchester in the UK. I have become to be known as the Blind Poet, and I have a condition called Retinitis Pigmentosa, or RP. And yeah, so I grew up here in Prestwich, which is where I am. I went to school here. I left Manchester when I was 18. I started working as a singer at what we call holiday parks. So the way I kind of describe it to Americans is if you've seen the film Dirty Dancing, those kind of camps. So I worked in places like that on the entertainment team, singing in shows at various locations in the UK, and did that for a few years. It was quite a strange life for me back then, because I'd have this really weird time of kind of being in these amazing locations, you know, singing on stage and, you know, living this great life, to then kind of, when it was out of seasonal and went through times of being homeless, where I'd sofa surf from friends' places, or sometimes even find myself out on the streets, and went through some really, really tough times kind of mentally with it. And all these things kind of, I always believe it kind of, you know, built up my armor to be the person that I am today. So, you know, I'm grateful for those times. But yeah, it was a great time and lots of great memories, but also some really tough times as well. I talk about a lot of that through my poetry, saying about how I would go through all those dark times a million times once more just to be where I am today and have my family around me. And actually, there were times in my life when I was so alone, and I never ever thought that I would be in a house with a wife and with children. And, you know, whenever I'm talking to people who are in a similar situation, who feel like they've got no one and they've got nowhere to turn, I kind of, you know, talk about my times back then and say, well, look, you know, if it can happen to me, it can happen to everyone. And it's amazing how life can change. So for me, the first time I ever heard the word retinitis pigmentosa was when I was about 9 years old. One of my sisters was the first one to be officially diagnosed with it in the early 80s. But back in the early 80s, they didn't know a lot about the condition. So I went in for a routine eye exam, and the eye doctor, the optician, looked into the back of my eyes, and there was this kind of pause, which I'll never forget. And literally 2 weeks later, I was declared legally blind, which is severely sight impaired. I told my employer in the car sales, and they let me go, so I lost my job. And so started a really kind of tough 8 or 9 months of really struggling. There's a lot more dimensions to it than most people actually realise. It's not just about the physical aspect of losing your sight. It was actually more the other things, misconceptions and the perceptions of disability being seen as a weakness, and is another one of the reasons I do what I do now. I got invited to go to a support group when I was at my lowest. And when the organisers of the support group heard that I was a singer, they said to me, you know, would you come and sing some songs and be the entertainment for the support group that day? And immediately I said yes, because I was actually really anxious and nervous about going to the support group. It was going to be my first time being around other visually impaired people with canes, people with guide dogs. And this, to me, was a scary glimpse into my future. So I just had this kind of eureka moment where I thought it'd be really cool if I could take a song that everyone knows, something that I'd kind of sang for years, change the words to talk about my experiences so far with low vision and blindness. That would be quite a cool thing to do. So I chose the song Stand By Me by Benny King. God, it's been, you know, almost 10 years now. But it goes, when the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. Please don't cry, just say you'll try and lend me your hand, for together we will beat this RP. When I sang the words that I'd wrote, there was this kind of response. The whole room changed, and people were coming up to me, shaking my hands, some people in tears, people hugging me and saying that the words that I'd written was describing how they'd always felt about their experiences, and it was like I'd written what was in their minds. This is what they were saying to me. And all of a sudden, something in me changed, because, you know, from that moment of being diagnosed back in the optician, so I went through this process of losing my confidence, losing my independence, my pride, and all of a sudden, when I got that response from these people, I felt like I've got my purpose back. This is something I can do. I have a secret from the world that most of you don't know. Won't hear it in the way I talk, and eyes no clue will show. If you listen to my story, something new to learn you'll find. For though I'm looking straight at you, I'm legally blind. It's not a simple yes or no, I'm more a shade of grey. I rarely venture out alone as things get in the way. For what I see affects my days in much more ways than one. This for some continues until little left has gone. But still this pain's invisible to those that pass us by. There's some afraid to hold a cane because of questions why. Accused of making up our claim and made to feel a fraud, feel drained of all my confidence, feel trapped behind this door. Now hardest thing to come to terms that makes my days feel long. It holds us back, knowledge they lack for all who've got it wrong. To hear their judge and jury even though their facts aren't straight, feel misdirected fury, wish opinions now could wait. To take the time to get to know the visions that we share. Come join me in my tunnel, hold my hand and show you care. You know, some of the best pieces of poetry I've ever written, I've written without stopping. It just falls out like it was, you know, someone's telling me the words. So my daughter Ellie lives with her mum, and when I wrote this, Ellie was about 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old. And I started to think about when's the right time to have a conversation with a child to say that, you know, you could go blind when you're older. Is there a right time to do that? It took me years to come to terms with how my eyes declined, through stages of acceptance of slowly going blind. But nothing I could ever do would allow me to prepare to tell my little girl a thing I still don't want to share. It's tortured me through sleepless nights, consumed my mind with guilt. The secret I have kept from her could break the trust I've built. I pray that she will understand the things I've tried to do and why I never told her that she could be 1 and 2. For she is still a child and far too young to burden with a fate that I might pass to her, for now's her time to live. But soon will come a moment when I know she must be told. When all the battles I have won, I'll pass for her to hold. But for every unheard question, there's an answer I've prepared. They're written in each line, each verse, each poem that I've shared. For every page I've filled, I've emptied out my heart and soul, so one day she would know the way. That's always been my goal. So Ellie, I hope years from now, you'll be there reading this. Know you can do amazing things, whether RP, hit or miss. My inheritance to you won't be a passed down faulty gene, but knowing all life's beauty that this VIP has seen. You know, when I go and speak at events, you know, you have people that are affected by low vision and blindness, disability, family members who know what it's like, who sit there and they feel because they're experiencing what I'm talking about. But then other people who have no experience with disability, because it's poetry and that emotional connect it brings with, you know, they close their eyes and they're there with us. And that's a really, you know, unique and wonderful experience and something I love doing. This is a human thing. When we have these, you know, tough times in our life, what we find is that we're actually being really hard on ourselves and we get really frustrated. And actually we make the situation worse because of our mindset. And if we stop and take a little kind of step back for a second and go, okay, what I'm feeling right now is perfectly normal and perfectly natural, and not be too hard and allow ourselves time to grieve or get over it or get ourselves together and have a down day and then get back out there. It makes things a lot easier, but we just, you know, as long as we don't beat ourselves up, so we can look at the things that we've already done in life, the dark times and the struggles that we've already overcome and survived. We know that we're capable of facing anything going forward, but we just need to remind ourselves that.